finally understand that that's all that you need to do in this process of life and spiritual awakening. It's just that thing. It's just like live from the impersonal. There will be moments where you won't be able to do it. Some things are unhealed in you and you'll get triggered. Okay? And then when you can't do it, you'll take a personal stance. And that's when you go into the conflict. And that's where guilt and blame and all the fun stuff arises from, and shame and yada yada. And that's where you need to ideally pause, breathe, invite the impersonal to view the personal. If you view what you're going through on the personal level from the impersonal, it makes room for it. You can now contain it. And when you can now contain it, that's actually what heals it. Hey friends, do you find that sometimes it's hard to contain certain things in your life? It's just hard to accept them, hard to give them space in your life, whether it's personal things or collective things. When we can't contain something, it's a sense of resistance that arises in us. It means that we have a negative definition towards that thing, whatever it may be. We see it negatively, and so we want to exclude it, cast it out. We don't have room for it. And so even when we're talking about things like letting go of something toxic in your life that you should be excluding, you should be letting go of your life, you still don't need to let it go in a negative way. You can contain it by seeing it in a positive way, seeing that really everything is for the best, because whatever it was, it may have taught you to discern what's not right for you and what is right for you. It may have taught you something about yourself. It may have been overall something that is supporting you, just not in a way that felt supportive. It's through the contrast of it that you realize that this isn't really what's supporting to you or for you, right? So you can let it go with a thank you from a place of gratitude rather than a vilification of it, right? That's how we always think we need to let go of things. That thing is bad, so I have to let it go. No, that thing was not for me maybe, but it was good overall because I learned something from it. I grew from it. I'm better off now. Yeah? So to contain anything, what that means is to be able to be space for it. It means to accept it. In acceptance, when there's no resistance, no rejection, no condemnation, then there is no difficulty to contain, no matter how much it is. Things don't get so clouded, so overwhelming, so much that you can't even think straight anymore. But this requires a certain feminine quality. It requires a certain softness that is extremely lacking in this world. The word is really understanding. You know, when you understand things, then it's not so hard to contain them. And when I say understanding, I'm really talking about a very macro, big picture of things that allows us to really understand. This picture is an evolutionary picture of the awakening to our true self, capital S, right? When we start to look at things from a more evolutionary angle, we can understand why people are where they are, why they behave the way they behave, right? Not everybody just reads a book, meditates, pops up on a video, and boom, they know that all of this is a dream, is a play of evolution, actually, of becoming, of coming back home. It's this whole, in a way, it's a charade. It's a whole, imagination, if you will, that we're not that already, and then we need to become that. We need to go all the way back home. Even when you know that, there is still a process of learning and growing, not because you need to become what you already are and have never not been, but because this is the thing. This is all we really have, in a sense, is the journey itself. This is the thing. The game is the thing, right? But when you forget it's a game, it's immediately so much more stressful, and you're so much more on the defense. And so obviously it's hard to contain everything that happens, again, whether personally or collectively or both, right? So this feminine place of softness is really the, in Kabbalah, it's the sphira that's called Binah. It might be translated to English as wisdom, but that's more for the sphira that's called Chokhmah. This is more understanding. It's more feminine. It's more about forgiveness. It's more about acceptance. It's more about this inclusive attitude. It's more surrendered. It knows that there is no attack and that there is no threat. And it can accept that whatever someone is doing, again, whether it's one person or whether it's a collective of persons doing something, there's simply an understanding of this being part of their process. It's part of their evolution. It's part of their way back home. It's almost as though you're standing at the end as what you really are and what everyone really is, and looking back at all the process and all the stages that people need to make along the way. And there's an impersonal aspect to it. So when you see someone hate, for example, or someone attempt to attack you, if you're not resisting it, if you're not rejecting it, if there's just that acceptance of it, and this is why I also mentioned the word forgiveness, that acceptance of it doesn't really feel hurt or attacked or threatened by this at all. It's an impersonal understanding of a process that needs to happen. So let's say if I'm Jewish right now, the rise of anti-Semitism in the world is such that somebody might want to kill me. That killing wouldn't be taken personally. There would be compassion. There would be forgiveness. There would be understanding of this soul's or being's journey and where they are. And it's not really about me or about Jews even, or whatever it might that being might think it's about in its delusion, right? And it's almost like I'm just there facilitating a part of the process. It's not personal. We're all, like Ram Dass said, walking each other home, but we're helping each other home. We're by serving certain roles that we're playing for each other, right? But at the same time, it's true for the awakened one, at least it's experientially true, that we're already home. There is no home to walk to. And then this whole play, game, whatever you want to call it, can be taken lightly, can be enjoyed, can be taken impersonally. Not when things are taken personally, it's like everything is offensive, and then you have to come back on the defense or the offense, and you can't contain it. Containing means that it's contained. Resistance means that now we're in conflict. So when you're really looking at it from what we call the self, or what we call God, which just means that part of you that is pure, that is love, that includes everything, that is whole, but with all the meaning that goes into the word whole. Yeah, that's what we mean by God. And ultimately, it's not a part of you. It's just that in the game, it seems like there's all kinds of levels, right? But really, there is what we are is just that wholeness. Yeah, but while these levels appear, we can't pretend they're not there. It's like creating a game and then refusing to play it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, this is really creativity. It's creative power, as I often say, expressing itself. Yeah, and to sort of not play in the game that you created is kind of weird. But I mean, it's part of forgetfulness. So that happens. So, but my point is not, we don't need to deny the game. We just need to know that it is a game. You don't need to pretend that there is no dream. We just need to know that it is a dream. And ultimately, what that means when we say things like there is no dream even, it just means that what we really are is not affected by any of the coming and going of all of this, right? But when you really know it, you have a relationship with the game in such a way where you're allowing it. That's another word. Acceptance, forgiveness, understanding, compassion, allowance. All of this is feminine. And it's what's extremely lacking oftentimes, right? The allowing. You allow it to be. You allow people to be where they are. You allow the process to happen. You allow difficult things to happen as well because they need to happen. This doesn't mean that on the practical level you're not human and you don't respond to things and you don't respond to calls for help, right? Really everything is relationship. Beyond relationship, there's nothing to talk about because there's no experience beyond relationship. So everything is relationship. This is all the time. All that's happening is the relationship of your true self, like God self, whatever you want to call that, with the dream. Or if you're not awake to the God self, it's the experience of whoever you think you are with reality, with everything that's happening to me, right? Yeah, and so it's taken personally, right? The impersonal view is, this isn't a personal conflict between me and things outside of me, allegedly. It's like I am the space for it all, but it's not a mental thing. It's a real, this is why I'm bringing all these words to it, to sort of bring the sense of the state of being of it, how soft it is, how surrendered it is, how not opposing or feeling opposed it is, how safe it is. It knows its safety. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm not denying the personal aspect. On the personal level, even though the person is a persona, it's a mask from Greek, right? It's a mask. It's not who you really are, but that's the role you play. So and I said, we ought to embrace the game. It's so not fun to just do this all the time. There's no juice in that. No, none of this is here. None of this is happening. It's really just enough to know that it's a dream. It's a game. It's almost like, if you will, like it's the, I think in some philosophies, I guess you could say, it's described as this, the out breath of God, right? Is like this. This is it begins the whole game of becoming, where we sort of like separate and divide and fragment, and that's all bits and pieces. And then the inhalation is unification, integration, picking up all the pieces and bits and coming back into this all-inclusive love, right? The more we love, we are being all-inclusive. The more we're not resisting, but actually accepting. The more we're accepting everybody and everything as a part of it. We're not excluding anything. And yet on the personal level, there's always going to be choice and discernment. And you're going to have to decide what for this person that you're playing, which you should completely own that role. You should completely own that person, in a sense. You should really, how do we say this? You should really embrace the person as well. Wherever it is, whatever it's going through, it needs to be included and accepted as well. Yeah? And sometimes what this means, this acceptance and inclusion, is it means to set a boundary to something, to discern what to keep in your life, what not to keep, to tune in and feel what's really right for my unique expression here. What is my way and what isn't my way? And to really honor that truth inside of you, and not to go according to what other people tell you or what spiritual teachings tell you, what the concepts in your head tell you. That's not real spirituality, listening to the concepts in your head. Like, that's part of our process. But at some point, these concepts need to be laid down, and we need to understand that the teaching lives inside of us, or the teacher, if you will. It's the same thing. It's a living thing, moment to moment, dynamic and alive in our hearts. Yeah? I'm putting my hand here. It's in your heart. This is where the teaching is. And it can change. What What seemed totally false and non-resonant yesterday can seem totally true and totally resonant today. It's a living thing. It's not like a dead concept that you just try to follow this dead formula or dead truth, that wordy truth or whatever. It's a living thing inside of you. You feel guided sometimes, even if you are guided to more concepts. It's the concepts that the inner teacher knows are relevant for you right now. That maybe you're ready and ripe for them, and you'll just open the book and read it and explode into this amazing, merging with the cosmos or whatever you want to call it. Right? And then there's something different that you're bringing to the game. You're bringing a different quality. You're a person, but you're really the cosmos as a person, or God as a person, or the universe as a person, or whatever you want to call it, or heaven as a person. Right? And you're bringing those qualities in, and it's like you're out of your love. It's like these gifts that you're wanting to give right now, and this is what I talk about when I say things like letting the self through, living as the self. It's bringing these, I don't know what to call them, cosmic qualities, these godly, divine qualities into this character. But still, because you are this human, there are things that are going to be, because you're unique, that are going to be right for you and going to be wrong for you. So a lot of, we live in this level of where we're both this impersonal thing that is the same. Wherever you look, you see that divine spark everywhere. It is everywhere. Ultimately, it's all there is, right? But you see it as though it's sort of found a distance from itself, as though it's created a distance from itself, and now it's journeying back to itself. And you got to hold that dichotomy in a way, because in a way both are true, or at least both are relevant enough to be held together. That there is no journey and there is no distance, and yet there obviously is. And we have to respect that, because otherwise we're living in a sort of, what's going to happen is you won't breathe well. This is a lot of toxic spirituality, toxic non-duality is too much neti-neti, too much negating, too much no. And maybe that needs to be there for a while. And, and then it's like in the Zen saying that you get to that point where rivers are not rivers and mountains are not mountains. What rivers and what mountains are you even talking about? And who's even observing them, or whatever, right? But then again, that saying goes back to the place where, yeah, rivers are rivers and mountains are mountains. But after you already have seen that there is no time and that there is no space, seen it really clearly, that you're not bound in any way whatsoever, that everyone is this wholeness, everyone is this beauty, everyone is this goodness, this purity, this love, and that's what we are. So after that, there's sort of a re-embrace of the human, of the person, because when you come to that place where you contain everything, where you realize that you contain everything, right, that acceptance, that it really is a place of understanding. It's like you understand everything. You understand everything that's going on. You understand kind of what it's for. Then that sort of begins to be applied to the human as well. You start accepting everything within yourself, right? It's like you see the big picture. You're awakened to the big picture, and you see that in this big picture, in this game of becoming and ascending or integrating or whatever you want to call it, there really is no enemy. There just is no enemy. And then your relationship to what we call the personal parts of yourself changes. You have compassion, you have forgiveness, you have acceptance, you have understanding for yourself. You have softness. Yeah? So everything is relationship, and really your relationship with the cosmos is going to affect your relationship with yourself. Your relationship with yourself is going to affect the relationship with your cosmos, and it's going to affect your relationship with anyone and everyone and anything and everything. Yeah? That's really the meaning of it's all one self. Is that, like the Course in Miracles says, anyone you encounter, remember that it is a holy encounter. The way you see him and the way you treat him is the way that you are seeing and treating yourself, right? So that's why I say, even when we let go of a relationship or something like that, we don't need to condemn it and vilify it and judge it and make it bad. Yeah, we need to understand that it's part of this whole process. It's part of this whole game. It's maybe part of how it works is that, you know, coal needs pressure to finally meet its full potential as a diamond, or, you know, or whatever forces act on a flower before it opens up to the sun. You know, all of these things are part of the game. That nothing is excluded, nothing is a mistake, nothing is wrong, and you, where you are right now, is exactly where you're supposed to be. It's exactly where you need to be. It's exactly right. It's just a lack of trust, or what we call doubt, that makes you think otherwise. But everything is always right. I mean, this divine intelligence and perfection is perfect. There is no wrong in this. Yeah? It's all included. It's just when you think, oh, that's extraneous, that doesn't need to be there. I'm telling you, there's nothing extraneous in existence. Nothing. Nothing. And when you actually start to get that, your whole feeling of how you move through everything completely shifts. So ultimately what I'm saying is you cannot separate between impersonal and the personal. The love that you find in the capital S self is going to also trickle in and become self-love. All the places you haven't forgiven yourself, all the places you hold judgment, all the places you're harsh and hard with yourself will soften up, right? But you will also have that ability to be firm when you need to. But it's an interesting thing, because you can be firm outwardly, but inside you're not hating, you're not angry, you're not... Inside you're understanding. It's not personal. It's not personal. It's not me against you. There's that acceptance. You're playing your part, and I just know this is the right action. This is the right response right now. It's not personal. It's not hate. It's not, I want you to die. It's, you know, it's not nothing what we call evil, which is really just disconnected from our essence, right? So that's the other side of understanding. Wisdom is always going to look at things constructively. It's always going to know that everything is for the best. Everything is helping me grow. Everything is helping everyone grow. They can resist it for as long as they want, but the more they resist the lessons, the more we resist our lessons, the more the lessons have to become extreme, and we'll have to learn them in less pleasant circumstances, if you will, right? They'll become more pronounced in a way, and they will almost like force us to surrender. Whereas if we do it sooner, we can just like choose to surrender out of wisdom, out of the wisdom that, okay, I see that this is serving a purpose. Everything is serving a purpose in the game, right? So it's serving a purpose of helping. It's always for the best. It's always helping. And if you want to see that, then you'll use it constructively rather than destructively to lead you into hate and anger and condemnation and judgment and all the things that actually make you suffer. You think you're hurting the other, but you're the one who's being hurt. Like I said, as you treat them, you're actually treating yourself. When you diminish another, when you disgrace them, put them lower, just to put yourself higher, basically, that's okay maybe as part of a process, as a momentary thing within your process, but not to stay there, yeah? Because again, wisdom isn't actually destructive in that sense. It sees everything as constructive, and it doesn't take any enjoyment in the belittling or certainly in the suffering of what we call others, yeah? Which are, again, divine sparks just like you are. All of it is God. Everyone you look at is really God. Everything you look at is really God. And it's like concealed, right? It's concealed. But when you know who you are, when you've seen the self, when you've seen that light, that indescribable beingness, love, whatever you wish to call it, absolute awareness, absolute being, it's everywhere. It's in everything. So it's really interesting because the more we can understand that this impersonality that I'm talking about, the more it can also really help us in our personal lives. Like our decisions will be the ones that are constructive, that are really helping us experience more joy and more enjoyment, I guess, of this dream. And that includes all the love and the gratitude and the gifts and the feeling blessed and just, yeah, it really comes down to the enjoyment of the process so much that you're not waiting for the next moment, that the process is so full to you and so fulfilling that you're not looking for it to be over. And besides, what are you going to find when the process is over? It's only yourself, which you already are now. You don't need to wait for that. It's really the enjoyment of both worlds. You get to enjoy being home and you get to enjoy the process simultaneously and enjoy being physical and being a human and having an experience and not knowing what tomorrow might bring and being in that experience, and it all turns into a thrill. So it basically all turns into a game, like I said. It's a play, and you're really playing. You're connected back again to the childlike aspect, which is like, this is a huge part of it, is the innocence of it. There's no guilt. There's no guilt anymore. With the personal, there's always going to be, if everything is just personal and there isn't the impersonal aspect, it's always going to be guilt, and it's always going to be shame, and it's always going to be doubt, and it's always going to be offense and attack and defense and all of these things. And with the impersonal, there's just a bigger, much bigger perspective, which is why, again, going back to what I said in the beginning, is why you can really contain everything. And you can contain also, by the way, within this acceptance, this full embrace, you can also contain destruction. But again, you see destruction as part of construction. It's part of creation. It's part of something that is ultimately cleansing. Maybe it doesn't make sense when we talk about it in human years. It looks like it just sucks, like it's just like, but actually it's in the big picture, bits and pieces of a learning process, a huge learning process. You can't think about it as a little human. You have to think about it as the cosmos itself, as existence itself. You have to be vast as you really are to really have room for all of these things and understand that, again, as I said, nothing is extraneous. Everything has its place. Everything has its reason and its purpose. And even if you can't tell what it is right now, you can just trust that it does have that. And that just by living in the question of what is the purpose of this? I know it's a good one. What is it? Just live in that question and it will reveal itself to you. Don't live in an answer. If you're already decided, if you already know, then you can't be shown, right? We need to live in that don't know mind in that sense, right? But the don't know mind is not the not understanding mind. It's not an imbecile. There's intelligence in you. This understanding that I'm talking about is divine compassion, divine. It's very motherly. It's very feminine. It's very, room for it all. It's trust at its deepest place. I guess that's the word, trust. And ultimately, just to end this video on my favorite note, which is love. This place that I've been speaking about here, this impersonal place of this acceptance, this understanding, it's really also peace. We've said the word trust, this ability to be spacious, vast, and containing, right? Really, when you are in that place from your heart, there is a love and appreciation also for everything. Yeah, it's a love and appreciation and light, sometimes even excitement. There is the excitement of just existing, being alive in that sense. There is a seeing of what is going on, what everyone is, how beautiful their process is. There's almost like a celebration of that. There's almost like, I so love that you are where you are. Instead of like, why can't you be where I need you to be? I need to fix you, and you shouldn't have your process. And sometimes, by the way, this is a lot of the gaslighting that the ego does, whether it's the ego acting through you or ego acting through somebody else, where it comes and tells you that there's something wrong with you, and it wants to fix you, and it wants to correct you, and where you are is not where you should be, and all that kind of stuff. And you can feel when it's coming from judgment. It doesn't feel like the person is cheering for you or is on the same team with you. It feels more like, yeah, their ego thinks that it knows what you should be doing, where you should be right now, all of these things. It thinks it knows. It's really the ego's arrogance and judgment, but it can dress up as all these seemingly spiritual wisdom and whatnot, that they're allegedly coming for, they're in your favor, it's for you, but they're really correcting you. It's love or spirit doesn't do that. It doesn't do anything that's gonna create more fear in you. It's not gonna come to you in a way that feels like it's opposing you, that you're wrong. The premise is already that you're immaculate, that you're whole, that you're beautiful. So that's where spirit's gonna come from. It's gonna come from a cheering you on from where you are to, okay, you're ready for the next step, and it's gonna feel right. And it's always, really it always has to come from within. And if the person from without who's telling you something is really coming from spirit in that moment, then what's going to happen is it's going to be received by you in a positive way. You're going to be able to receive it. You're not going to feel like you're being negated or opposed or told you're wrong. It's basically the inner teacher appearing to you from outside. And really the reason it resonates is because it's really your inner teacher using some form to come and speak to you right now, right? And so it resonates from within because it's not really from without. But when it doesn't resonate, the teacher within says, this doesn't resonate. There's a feeling to it. And so you need to trust that feeling, because it means that what's coming from without, even if that person in their mind, they think that they have the best intentions in the world, really, the teacher within is telling you, for you right now, this is what ego is saying. And usually what the person without is saying is also what your ego is saying within. Something's wrong with me. I'm not doing this right. Why am I not more advanced than where I am? Why am I not? I should have already known this. I should have, oh shit, I made a mistake. I'm stupid. Whatever it is, all this judgment that comes in, right? Judgment is ego. Love is spirit. It's that simple. Love is who you are. This judgment thing isn't who you are. And as the more you bring the acceptance and the love and the forgiveness into yourself and into the world, this judgment dies out. Because we stop feeding it. We choose acceptance and love instead. You see, and it's only this that brings peace. This brings division and war. But what I'm warning you about, in a sense, not from fear or anything like that, just as something that you might want to be aware of, is that this one can be really deceptive and try to sound like spirit. And it's going to quote books, and it's going to give you a lot of fancy sayings, and it's going to, whatever it is, but it's not about the words, and it's not about the concepts, and it's not about the wonderful and beautiful quotations that are probably true, but just not out of context for what you're going through right now. So you got to be aware of the feeling, not the words, not how intellectually appropriate or good it sounds. The feeling. The feeling. Yeah? It's almost like if you had no head and you just could feel. You were just like, no thoughts. You're just feeling this. Does this feel true? Does this feel like this is what love is guiding you to right now? And sometimes even the things that the ego says can be true, but they're all just in the wrong timing. Again, like I said, it needs to well up from within. Truth comes from within, really. It doesn't... all these things from without, like I said, even if it does feel like it's coming from without, it's really the inner teacher has brought you to a place where you are ready to receive a new level, let's say. And so it's going to bring you to something that it is speaking to you through this outer thing. And that's what the feeling of resonance is. But when it doesn't, or the feeling of the rightness of it, of like the growth that feels positive, that feels, there's a feeling to it when it's guided, when it's true, when it's from spirit, when it's from love. It's expansive. The other kind is not expansive. It makes you contract. And it could be that it's something that you do need to learn, but this person is forcing it on you at the wrong timing. They need to let you have your process and come to it from within. The flower opens to the sun when it's ready. If you force the sun too strong, too soon, it's going to do the opposite effect. So remember, like I said at the beginning, the teaching and the teacher are living. They're living within you. Well, it's like the Course in Miracles has a lesson that says, God speaks to me all throughout the day. Well, if you actually know that, you don't need to put that book away immediately. Why would you listen to a book over the real teaching inside, the living one that lives, not dead words on a white page? All these teachings, eventually, they're just to get you to the point where you can listen inwards. Then you can really honor your process. Then you're really guided. Then everything's going to work out. Everything's going to work out. So I want this to let this be the end of toxic spirituality and toxic non-duality. Really, we don't need to do anything that suppresses the person. We don't need to reject parts of us for being unenlightened enough, or for taking something too personally, for example. That's not something that needs to be shunned, rejected, condemned, judged. Like I said, those parts of you, for example, that do want to attack, that do take things personally, that do feel offended, can you bring that impersonal aspect there, right? And say, that's okay. Like, let's accept that. Let's make room for that. Let's see that that is part of my process. That is part of my growth, right? It's not extraneous. These parts are coming up for a reason. This is all surfacing to be transmuted. I've said this many, many times. I'm just getting more and more specific about it, right? So it's coming up not to be rejected and judged, but to be contained. Contain it. Be space for it. And as you bring that impersonal aspect to it, something transmutes, genuinely transforms about that personal part that took it as an attack, or wanted to attack back, wanted to choose a destructive view rather than a constructive one, right? What happens to it there? It softens up, and it becomes this thing in you that says, I really just wanted to protect you, but maybe we don't need to go kill the other person. Maybe what we need to do is just set a good boundary, or just realize that it's time to discern. Maybe this thing is just something I'm done with. Maybe I don't have to go all jihad with it. I don't have to go all extreme fundamentalist, Basically, the whole extreme thing in spirituality or in the world is not healthy anywhere. The whole fundamentalist thing in spirituality or in the world is not healthy. There has to be this, there has to be room for the personal, and what makes room for it is the impersonal. And that's all it is. When you finally understand that that's all that you need to do in this process of life and spiritual awakening, it's just that thing. It's just like, live from the impersonal. There will be moments where you won't be able to do it. Some things are unhealed in you and you'll get triggered, okay? And then when you can't do it, you'll take a personal stance. And that's when you go into the conflict. And that's where guilt and blame and all the fun stuff arises from, and shame and yada yada. And that's where you need to ideally pause, breathe, invite the impersonal to view the personal. If you view what you're going through on the personal level from the impersonal, it makes room for it. You can now contain it. And when you can now contain it, that's actually what heals it. This inclusion of it, this integration of it, which literally transmutes it or transforms it back into, its true nature, basically. It's like alchemy, isn't it? Yeah. Because what it was to begin with, what everything is to begin with and to end with, is that divinity, that godliness, whatever you want to call that love, that wholeness that I was speaking about, right? Everything is that, right? It's just we buy into the disguises, right? You drink from a cup of coffee, for example, you think it's really a cup of coffee. You're literally, it's all God. It's all that, whatever that is, okay? It's just words for it, right? But it's that. So in the same way, even your personal things of even your own hate and your own all kinds of things that arise, when they are giving the space from the impersonal, it's like they're understood. They're understood that they served a certain purpose. But when we don't do that pause, then we keep going with the personal. We keep going into the conflict. The conflict kind of gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And this is what I said earlier about the lesson sort of becoming more extreme, in a way to get our attention. But it's not like it's a punishment from the cosmos or the universe or whatever, or God, it's because we are continuing with the way of force. I'm going to force this. And just, it doesn't work. Like the resistance thing, the resistance is persistence, but it really fixes it in place, and it even fuels it more and more and more and more and more until you're just either exhausted or it breaks you or something happens, and then the light finally comes out. It's like that, you have to be cracked for the light to come in a way. Got to be cracked. You got to be broken sometimes. So like I said earlier, there is beauty in the destruction. There's a positivity to it. There's actually a new creation in the destruction, right? So again, the summary of it is really that simple. If you learn how to do that, if you have that awakening to the impersonal, and you know that that's all you need to do is bring it into the personal, you will delay less and less. You'll just pause more quickly, just do the shift. You allow that transmutation and go on your merry way. But if you don't do that, that's okay. Don't add more judgment to it. Don't add more guilt to it. Don't add more of ego to ego. That's okay. You have your process. You make your mistakes. That's freaking allowed. It's totally allowed. You're not bad for it. You're not a sinner for it. It's just a process of learning. Do you punish a 4-year-old for not being able to answer a mathematical question that you as an adult can answer? But as a 4-year-old, maybe they don't know it yet. They're learning. They might make some mistakes, but do you take it so like, he made a mistake, he's not allowed to? No, not at all. Give room to the process as well. It's okay. It's okay to be human. It's okay to make mistakes, right? Eventually, all this personal stuff that the person holds onto and all of that, eventually, all of that, I guarantee you, is making room for the impersonal, because you will see sooner or later that the personal is not the way. It's just not the way. It's not bad. We don't need to vilify it. Blah, 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 blah. We don't need all this spiritual concepts that tell us how, I don't know, whatever it is that they tell us that want to make us suppress ourselves. This, what I'm talking about, isn't coming from suppression. This is something that wells up in you, that when you're ripe, you're ready to hear it. You're ready to understand it. You're ready to act on it and to apply it. It's not this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do. No, I'm cheering you on. I'm like, I said this in other videos too. I'm your cheerleader. I really am. Yeah, I'm selling you to you. That's what I'm selling if I'm selling anything. But I'm just playing my role in the process anyway. Yeah? And again, we're in an amazing situation where there's no process. You're already home, but there's definitely a process. No distance, no journey. Definitely distance and a journey. And if you can hold those both together, you'll have a juicy awakening. You'll have a juicy life. You'll have a juicy process. It'll be fun. The game won't be a mistake that needs to be corrected by awakening from it. It'll be that you can be awake and playing the game simultaneously, and you get the best of both worlds. You get to enjoy the game, and you get to enjoy reality simultaneously. And, if you're God, why shouldn't you be able to do that? Simultaneity, right? It's like When I was a kid, people would ask at school, kids would ask, could God create a rock that is so heavy or so big or whatever that God could not lift? Right? I mean, this is like elementary school, but it was an interesting question, right? And the truth is that God can create a rock like that God cannot lift, and God can also lift it. And that's what we're like. We are so binary with our either or, right? And this is more of a both thing. You are being. You're not, that beingness doesn't need to become, doesn't need to improve. It's already perfect. It's already whole. It's already beautiful. And at the same time, it's playing a game of becoming. And that game of becoming seems to have no end. That's a different topic, but it seems to have no end. And then you can play in that. But when you know it's a game, it's fun. Even when it's challenging, there's fun to it. You know? If you love a certain game and the challenge gets big, do you go like, or do you go like, ooh, let's see about this. This is mastery now to maneuver this. Let's see if we can do this.